Namaste and welcome y'all to my course. This course on creation, creativity, and recreation. This is a course I've been working on for, I don't know, like 6 years now. And first time I've ever tried to do it in an online video setting, but kind of excited about it and hope that you are too. So, I'm the kind of guy that doesn't like to screw around too much. So let's just dive right in and get started right off the bat. So in this course, we are going to learn and use this method, a particular skill that's called the Phenomenological Method. And I'm going to talk about it more later. I'll give you plenty of insight into it. For now, you can just listen to this kind of quick overview of what the Phenomenological Method is and how we're going to use it in this class and why it's so important. You know what? I'm not really good at sitting down, so I'm going to get my butt up off the chair. All right, to get started, I think it's helpful to think about the phenomenological method in terms of a circle. In fact, a lot of my students have made fun of me over the years. I don't seem to draw anything other than circle with arrows pointing into the middle. In fact, you will see it right now for the first time. So whatever we put in the center of that circle, let's call that our object of study, the phenomenon that we are trying to study, right? This phenomenon, this thing, whatever it is. It can be a physical thing, a type of thing, maybe mice, or maybe cancer, nursing, or philosophy or ideas. Whatever the thing is that you're studying, put that thing in the middle. Throughout much of this course, we'll use justice, and we'll put justice at the center of that circle, or we could put God at the center of that circle, or human person at the center of that circle. We'll take turns doing all of these sort of things. We'll begin, in fact, by putting religion in the center of this circle and trying to see religion from just the word and the idea of religion from as many different perspectives as possible. So the first step, which I like to call step 0, because 0 is a circle, is to simply draw a circle. Then the next step is to put whatever that thing that you're studying, whichever phenomenon that you're studying, put that in the center of the circle. We don't even have to define this thing very accurately or very specifically now. Right now we just want what one philosopher, Robert Neville, calls a vague category, just sort of a vague idea of what it is that we're going to study. The more determined it is at this point, then the less phenomenological our investigation will be. Next, we want to try and see this thing from as many different perspectives, as many different angles, as many different sides as we can. Try to see this thing from lots of different angles. Now, it's impossible to view any particular thing from an infinite number of angles, right? It's also impossible to see it from more than one angle at a time. And that's part of the point. So therefore, it's helpful to get some help, as it were. And really, the more help, the more perspectives, the better. The more accurately and truly we can see this thing itself. Most likely, we're going to see things a bit differently given our perspectives, but nevertheless, it's trying to figure out, well, what do our views in common and how can we sort of piece these perspectives together to get a truer, more accurate and factual understanding of the thing itself, whatever phenomenon that we're studying. You know what? Let's get a concrete example of what the hell we're talking about. I'm not going to pick an example at random, but instead use an example that was given by a scholar who's often called the father of phenomenology. His name is Edmund Husserl in this book called Ideas. So Husserl uses this example of a game die. So let's think about, I usually carry this game die around with me. This one's kind of a fun one. This one's a normal game die. But let's say we want to try and see this game die as it is, and to understand the distinction between the die as it is, as an entity, as a thing, and how that phenomenon appears to our consciousness as an object of consciousness. So how does this external physical thing appear to our consciousness, and how can we distinguish our idea of it from the thing itself? Way complicated already. I told you I don't like to screw around. We're diving right in. Don't worry, I'm just giving you a quick overview of Phenomenological Method. It will make much more sense as we go along. Right now, I'm just giving you the basic overview, introduction to it. And the best way to do that is to think as simply as we can about this die. It seems like a simple example, and it is a simple example. It gives us the basic idea of the phenomenological method and the value of phenomenology and the importance of phenomenology. And of course, we all know what a die is, right? A die has 6 sides and flat faces and everything. That's part of the point of using the die, is because it's a simple, easy example that with which we're already familiar. All right, so let's see. From one angle, it's going to look like a flat square with 3 dots. But from the opposite angle, right, it's going to look like a flat square with 4 dots, right? Because opposing sides of a regular playing die always total 7. But if you are seeing the number 3 and I'm seeing the number 4 and I'm asking you to report on your scientific observation of what you're seeing, then you're going to say, well, I see a square with 3 dots, and I'll say, well, I'll see a square with 4 dots, and that person over there will say, I see a square with 2 dots, and the person over there will say, I see a square with 5 dots, and the person from a particular angle will say, well, I don't actually see a square at all. It looks like, right, it's something that's not quite square. All right, let's pause here and zoom in so we can understand what the hell this dude's talking about. So when seen from a 90-degree angle, each side of the die appears to our conscious mind as a square figure with some number of circles in it. But from a different angle, the same die appears to our conscious mind not as a square, but as a 6-sided polygon. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Obviously, this person will see far more dots than the others. However, while some of the dots appear almost circular, most of them are actually stretched ovals, ellipses with 2 foci instead of a center. Now, to demonstrate, note that all of the red circles that I've added here are identical copies of one another. So what? What was Edmund Husserl's point? So part of his point is that there are no shortcuts to understanding the truth of reality. A phenomenologist must carefully, clearly, and accurately describe what appears to his, her, their conscious mind, and must identify where they are coming from, and must listen to those around them. Only then can we actually know the thing itself, rather than the mental image of that thing, which is something created by the mind. So to summarize, phenomenology requires us to carefully describe precisely what our senses reveal to us, but also describe where we are coming from. This is called our perspectival starting point. In order to have a more accurate understanding of the real world as it is, then we must listen to the descriptions given by other humans, and we must consider where those other humans are coming from. What is his, her, their perspectival starting point? And I see multiple sides. So by getting as many different perspectives on the thing itself as possible, then we get a clearer, more accurate view of the thing itself. One of the things that this does is help us to distinguish between the object and our subjective experience of that object so that we can get a truer, more accurate sense of the thing itself. Now, obviously, it may be obvious, perhaps it's obvious, it could lead to some confusions, right? It could lead to some problems. If you are describing your phenomenological experience of the die and you say, well, I see a square with 3 sides, and I say, well, I see a square with 4 sides, we are both clearly correct, right? Even though our reports of the Ding an sich, the thing itself, are different, right? So then how do we resolve this confusion? Well, phenomenology says we shouldn't prima facie assume that you're right or that you're wrong or that I'm right or that I'm wrong. But nevertheless, we need to try and identify our perspectival starting point, right? If I understand that you're coming from over there and you understand that I'm coming from over here and this thing is in the middle, then clearly we are seeing different sides of the same thing, right? And then we can start to piece together our subjective reports of our phenomenological experience of the particular phenomenon, the thing itself, whatever it is at the center of the circle, and then we can say, all right, well, it's something that has 3 dots on one side, 4 dots on one side, 2 dots on another side, and clearly seems to have more than just the side that I'm seeing, but perhaps, I don't know, 6 sides. Now, the same move, philosophically, that helps us to overcome that perceived or potential problem of differing reports of a thing itself also is the benefit of phenomenology. If we each describe what we see but also identify our perspectival starting points, then we start to get a much more complete picture of the thing itself, right? Seeing this thing from all sides. Now, obviously in this course we aren't studying playing die, right? As fun as that might be. But instead, we're going to study religion. So we're going to put ideas and concepts and more abstract, difficult things that we can't necessarily see. But it's important to note that this phenomenological method can really be used to study just about anything, perhaps anything.
Editing for today's lecture is proudly brought to you by Abby's Blue Hole Brewing. Abby's Blue Hole Brewing, deeper and wetter. Cheers.
So let's start over, so to speak. We're going to start over a lot in this class. Start over is one of my mantras that we will say start. Anyway, let's start over. Let's put the word religion in the center, right? We're going to start by doing that in the next lecture. At some point, we're going to have to come up with some sort of vague agreement, some vague understanding of what we mean by the word religion. And soon, through your podcast recording and other things, I will get to know you, and then I will get to know your perspectival starting point and where you're coming from. But for now, we need to start off, if we're going to use the phenomenological method, which we are, that we're going to, then it's important for me to begin by identifying my perspectival starting point. It's important for me to begin by telling you where I'm coming from, right? What is my perspectival starting point? Well, so on the most literal level, I come from South Carolina. I was born in a town called Spartanburg, South Carolina. The foothills, or the Piedmont, given our French ancestry, French occupation of the otherwise Cherokee Nation there. As you can see, I have long wanted to be a cowboy, and yeah, one day maybe I'll attain that goal. Now, when I was a young kid, my best friend in the world was Judith, a boy named Judith, and he lived right around the corner. There were two boys our age in the neighborhood. The other one was a total asshole, but Judith and I became really good friends, and I will say probably more about my experiences with him in the future, but I mention it now because that friendship, that bond that I had with Judith at a young age really in profound ways shaped my understanding of myself and what I understand to be my calling or my purpose, particularly my interest in Hindu and Christian comparative studies and analysis and thinking about how Hindus and Christians are different, but also how Hindus and Christians are similar. In junior high, I fell in love with the saxophone and also with my band director, Mr. Gibbs, who was an enormous influence on my life. And my band director in high school, too. I became a band geek, band captain, all that kind of stuff. And became super close friends with Dexter, my best friend seen here, who was also in the band. We were part of a quartet. The four of us were quite a force to be reckoned with. And after high school, Dexter went and joined the Marines and sadly lost his life serving our country. I, on the other hand, went to Furman University. Furman University is in upstate South Carolina, in Greenville, South Carolina, seen here at the Bell Tower. And I majored in music and double majored in finance. After college, I got married. I have a habit of doing that. And I moved to New York City. Moved to New York without any contacts, without any jobs prospects, without any idea what I was going to be doing. I just wanted to work in finance, and I knew that there was a lot of it in New York City. So I got a credit card and bought a Brooks Brothers suit and some Bostonians that I couldn't afford, and also that just made my feet cry. But you know, you got to look good and got to sell it in finance, and so I did what you got to do to make it there. And I literally hit the pavement, walked down Broadway in my Brooks Brothers and my Bostonians. I just walked down Broadway until I got all the way down into the financial district and wound up at the World Trade Center, where I literally walked in the door and said, I want to apply for a job. And they laughed at me. And what do you know, I got the call and started working at Morgan Stanley on the 73rd floor of Tower 2 of the World Trade Center. I worked there from 1997 until 2000 when I received a phone call from a headhunter who offered me a lot of money and a pretty sweet title to leave retail brokerage and go into institutional finance. So by age 25, I was doing pretty well. I had over $1 million in assets. I was associate vice president of Thompson Institutional Services. I owned a small brownstone in Upper Manhattan, 4-unit apartment building. And, things were going well. Things were going well. Then September 11th, 2001 happened. I went up on the roof with a couple of tenants that lived with me in the building. And we sat on the roof and watched my old office building collapse to the ground. And it's in those moments where, you kind of, you change your thinking and you reevaluate things. And at least that's what it did for me. So it caused me to sort of rethink what I was doing with my life, what I understood to be my calling and my purpose and my mission. Now, just to be clear, I don't intend to denigrate finance in any way at all. I enjoyed finance. I think finance is good. Without finance, we wouldn't have hospitals and schools and roads and large municipal projects and all sorts of things. So not denigrating a career in finance whatsoever, but just for me, I felt like I wanted a career where I could more directly see the impact that I was having on those around me. And I really had a deep interest in the next generation and trying to make sure that the next generation would, have some means of understanding one another, particularly religious diversity and ethnic diversity, and just sort of human diversity in a new way. So that's what led me to go back to school. When I first left finance, I began working as a youth director at a church on West End Collegiate Church on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. As part of my duties, I was organizational director of the soup kitchen there, organizing volunteers and working with social workers and really getting to know the population, providing a sort of just a friendship ministry to those who were in dire straits. Most of the people who came to our soup kitchen were homeless, but many were not. And over the course of my time there, I got to see this transition of people moving from very stable situations to more desperate situations to finally being homeless and on the streets. And watching that transition was heart-wrenching and painful and difficult for me and for everyone who worked there. But it led me to seminary. So I attended Drew Theological School in Madison, New Jersey for 3 years. And it was at my time at Drew when I first got to go to India. So my guru and mentor, Wesley Aryaraja, took me and a large group of students to India. So here I am on the beach in Chennai. I also spent a month in Ghana. My time in Ghana began as part of another school trip through Drew Theological School, but I stayed on for quite a while after the rest of the group left, really to solidify some friendships and to get to know the culture and the religious diversity within Ghana. And Ghana had a big impact on me and my self-understanding. Then I got married again. I collect ex-wives and fell in love with scuba diving. I've been on, I'm not sure how many, somewhere between 120 and 150 dives in various places around the world. These are some photos that I took, except for the ones of me, which I didn't take. I also moved, after seminary, I moved to India for various reasons, bought a motorcycle and moved to Bangalore, India, in southern, sort of right in the middle of the southern tip of India. I moved to India for a few reasons. One was to attend Dharmaram Vijay Kshetra, which is a pontifical university dedicated to understanding religious diversity, founded after Vatican II. But I would say the main reason I moved to India was to study Sanskrit. Here's a couple of pictures, one with my mentor at Dharmaram, Father Dr. Saju Chakalakal. Great name, and a great person, and a great mentor, teacher to me, and my best friend in India, Roy, who's also Dr. Father Roy. There's another picture of me riding the trains in India, reading Patrick Olivell's translation of the early Upanishads. It's great. It has the Sanskrit on one side and the English on the other. So it was my first time reading the Upanishads when I was in India and studying them, particularly with my guru, Suresh. So Suresh Acharya, seen here, he would object to me calling him Acharya. So my guru, Suresh, Suresh Sharma, who taught me Sanskrit, and he was very interesting. He is a very interesting person. He's from Sringeri, Karnataka. He learned Sanskrit in the traditional way at the Sringeri Mata, which was an institution founded by Shankaracharya, who's this 8th century theologian, Hindu theologian, who I wound up writing my dissertation about. So a nice little connection there to those older, more ancient roots. While I was at Dharmaram, I did my second master's degree, this time in comparative philosophy. And my particular focus was on contemporary Indian philosophy in dialogue and in comparison with contemporary continental philosophy, so primarily French and especially German continental thought from the 20th century, grounded in phenomenology and postmodern ethics. So in addition to my master's thesis, which was 150 pages long, I also wrote a 320-page book while I was there called The Quest for Postmodern Ethics, a phenomenological comparison of Martin Heidegger and Sri Aurobindo Ghosh. Sri Aurobindo Ghosh is somebody that we will talk about a bit in this philosophy, and Heidegger we won't really discuss, but his thoughts come through in my methodology and ontology. Thanks in part to that book and my years of study in India, I was fortunate enough to get into Harvard University and move to Somerville, Massachusetts in 2008, where my daughter Leela was born. And Leela is a Sanskrit word which means play, and it's not just a word that means play, it's actually the third word in the title of this course, Creation, Creativity, and Recreation, or play. That word play is deeply philosophical. It's a term with a great deal of philosophical and theological meaning, which we will, to which we will return a number of times throughout this course. A couple of years later, in 2011, my son Cyrus was born, C.J. Bannon. C.J. is named in part after my old Jeep. I had a Jeep CJ7 throughout high school and college, and I fell in love with that Jeep. I had to sell it in order to invest in real estate, but now I got my CJ back, and the second CJ is so much better than the first. So CJ stands for Cyrus James Bannon. James, of course, after his grandfather, but also after the brother of Jesus, and the epistle writer who said that faith without works, without ethics, without actions is dead. And Cyrus, his first name, he's named after the great Persian emperor, King Cyrus of Persia, Emperor Cyrus of Persia, who took over nearly the entire known world at the time and was known particularly for religious freedom and promoting religious freedom and instilling religious freedom throughout the entirety of his empire, for which, by the way, he receives the title of Messiah or Mashiach in Isaiah 45, chapter 1. So there you have a picture of me with quite a beard going on there. I didn't shave during my preparation for my comp exams, third year of doctoral studies, which is right exactly when Cyrus was born. Leela was born during orientation week, my first year of doctoral studies, and Cyrus was born 3 weeks before my comprehensive exams at Harvard. Perfect timing on both accounts. But I did make it through after just 7 short years at Harvard University. I graduated with my doctorate there, seen here being anointed, as it were, by my doctor father, Frank Clooney, and by Professor Janet Gatso. During my time there, I wrote my dissertation entitled Apophatic Measures Toward a Theology of Irreducible Particularity, which is just this fancy, pretentious way of investigating the value, the epistemological, philosophical, and especially the theological value of difference, uniqueness, diversity. What is this? What does it mean to be different? What does it mean to be unique? What is the value theologically, philosophically, scientifically, intellectually, ideologically, all these epistemologically? What's the value of difference or uniqueness or diversity? More narrowly, my focus was on this Hindu theologian of the 8th century, Adi Shankaracharya, and Nicholas of Cusa, 15th century Christian philosopher. After I graduated in 2015, I finally attained my dream of becoming a professor. And I love teaching for 6 years. I'm now in my 6th year of teaching at Fitchburg State University. Love teaching there, and has been a joy during these 6 years of teaching consistently there. I also was fortunate enough to teach for 3 years at Boston College, teaching a course called The Religious Quest, from which this course derives its subtitle. And also was lucky enough to teach at Stonehill College. Go Skyhawks. I mean, go Falcons and go Eagles. Falcons, Eagles, Skyhawks. A lot of birds. I was fortunate enough to teach at Stonehill College for a year, and who knows, perhaps would still be there if not for the coronavirus. But instead, here I am in my guest bedroom, unemployed, and speaking to you. And I hope you're enjoying this introduction to this course so far. I live on a farm. I'm a single dad, live on a farm, a 9-acre farm in southern New Hampshire with my 2 kids. We grow much of our own food. We moved here in part to be more in touch with nature and more in touch with our food, and to live in a way that's more harmonious, certainly having a smaller footprint on this planet, but also to really get to know and to have a more intimate relationship with the land and with nature and with our food in particular. Now there's a lot of snow here. We have 2 dogs seen here, Melly, and, well, her name's Chipotle, but we just call her Puppy. Everybody just calls her Puppy. So Melly and Puppy. We also have an increasing number of cats. We started with 2 cats, Raja and Jasmine, and then they had 3 kittens, and I fell in love with, the kids and I fell in love with the kittens, so we wound up keeping 2 of them. And then Jasmine just had kittens a second time just a few days ago. We also have a horse named Lola and a pond. And we used to have this pony named Cutie, but Cutie has gone on to a different farm. And we used to have a cow named Clara. I used to milk Clara every day before going to teach at Boston College. Clara gave birth here on the farm to a bull named Mocha, seen here. This is actually Mocha's very first day, the day that he was born, and on the top is another bull, Gerald the Snowy Bobby, who I will say more about later, but a bull who was very near and dear to me. We were great buds until, of course, he reached sexual maturity and tried to fuck me, and then had to go off to freezer camp. But he was sweet and tender, and he still is. We also have bees, and we've had pigs in the past. Here you see Hermione Squealer and Severus Swine in their pen called Hogwarts. We also have bees, and yeah, we love our little farm here and try to stay in touch with nature as best we can.
Today we're here to tell you about
Bannon, Zaps,
Zombie Apocalypse
Prep School.
We're going to teach you all the things you need to know to get prepared for the inevitable zombie apocalypse. We've got all the latest technology, such as
PS4 controllers, axes, hatchet,
baseball bats,
and katanas. We will teach you how to train with
axes,
and special kinds of sticks, katanas.
and axes, and more.
And we will teach you how to find weapons in the middle of the woods, otherwise known as sticks. And we will teach you how to carve them into
other types of sticks.
Like this one, which used to be an ordinary stick, but now is
an extraordinary stick.
and this hatchet. It's super good for hurting zombies.
And through our patented, high-tech, ultimate pedagogy training program, we will put you in front of a PS4 and give you all the latest zombie games, but that's not all.
No, it is not.
While you're playing the zombie apocalypse games, we will physically assault you!
And on the PC, we will physically assault you.
But that's not all.
No, it's
When it happen, you will always be prepared.
How do you think you're gonna sleep during the zombie apocalypse? The answer? You won't!
Cause there will be zombies everywhere. And during this prep school, you can't sleep.
You will experience extreme sleep deprivation. We won't let you sleep 1 minute in the 2 months that you're here.
Watching zombie movies and zombie shows and training with our weapons.
And they will be sleeping in a cardboard box that's on fire!
But we will not let them die because this is zombie prep school and you will not die. Bannon Zaps, zombie apocalypse prep school.
Sign up now!
0000000.
All right, you know what? Let's start over. What is the point? What's the point of all this stuff? I don't want you to get the idea that I'm talking about myself because I enjoy talking about myself, because trust me, believe me, I really do not. Instead, I want to emphasize that it's necessary for us to identify our perspectival starting points. I'm giving you mine because I'm teaching the course, but I also need to know each one of yours. Have you ever had a conversation with somebody where you get frustrated and you say to the other person, we just see things differently? I imagine that you probably have had that experience. Many of us have, maybe even more so recently. Phenomenology emphasizes that that should never be the end of a conversation. That's the reason for having the conversation. The fact that we see things differently gives us insights into reality that we can only discover through conversation with one another. So in order to do that, in order to understand those differing perspectives, the fact that we see things differently, we need to begin by identifying, well, where is it from which we see, right? So I'm seeing this thing differently than you're seeing this thing differently. Fine, likewise the die, right? But it only becomes useful information once we understand one another's perspectival starting point so that we know where you're coming from and you know where I'm coming from, and we can then begin to sort of, that's the point. So that's part of the point of telling you where I'm coming from in the story that I've just told you. But another part of the point is, what are my motivations, or in phenomenological terms, my intentions, right? Where am I coming from? Or Aristotelian terms, I guess we talk about telos or something. And in Plato's terms, we would talk about the desire, the eros. So what is it that drives me? It's not money. I am literally unemployed as I'm recording these things. It's not money. I am genuinely driven by a belief that in order to tackle and address the very real problems that confront our world in 2021 and beyond, in order to tackle those very real problems that we confront today, we need new ways of thinking. In order to tackle the very real problems of today, we need new ways of thinking. And those new ways of thinking can only come from listening to one another and through collaborative efforts of learning how to listen to one another, learning how to work together cooperatively in order to build a future with fewer of these massive problems that confront us at the moment. But I also want to argue that these new ways of thinking need not necessarily be new, but might in many cases be very, very old ways of thinking, very old ways of thinking, ancient wisdom that comes to us from many, many different traditions, many communities, many human cultures around the world, each of which have something unique and different to offer. So we're not studying all of them in order to find out what the truth is per se, but instead sort of plumbing the depths of human ingenuity, human creativity, and human wisdom through these pockets of information that we can glean from here and there in various cultures and scriptures and texts and wisdom traditions around the world. That's why I do what I do, and that's why I invite you on this journey, this religious quest with me through these ideas of creation, creativity, and recreation. I've also tried to make it fun and funny. Forgot to say that earlier. Namaste.